For well over a year now, UFC fans have been going through a roller coaster of emotions, wondering whether or not the heavyweight super fight between Tom Aspinall and Jon Jones was actually happening. It was a confusing time because every new piece of information that came out about the negotiations seemed to contradict the previous developments, but it all finally came to a close on June 21st of 2025 when Jon Jones took to social media and officially announced his retirement, causing the majority of the MMA fanbase to rejoice and excitedly label him a duck while crowning Aspinall as the ultimate heavyweight Chad that scared Jones out of the UFC. And to channel Anthony Smith for a second here, on paper, it seemed like people got exactly what they wanted. Their beliefs about Jones were confirmed and Aspinall could finally move on to what exactly? See, nobody in their right mind would ever deny that Tom Aspinall is a special talent. Just watching the way he moves around the octagon as a 250-pound man would convince even the biggest of contrarians, no question about it. But unfortunately, in this era of the UFC, talent doesn't always cut it, and in this video, I'll break down why Tom Aspinall is destined for a career where he struggles to be appreciated by both the fans and the company he works for. In the early days of the UFC, the promotion was largely left to the fighters, and your position within the company was determined by how good you actually were inside of the octagon, since the UFC was constantly in danger of going bankrupt and the sport of MMA itself was viewed as a shady underground affair closer to a snuff film than anything resembling a sanctioned competition. Most of the viewer base was naturally made up of hardcore fans who congregated in online communities where they dissected and discussed obscure interviews, articles, and rumors in order to make sense of what was going on in the sport. And Dana White and the Fertitta brothers prided themselves on catering to these fans specifically by making fights that they wanted to see. Rarely was anyone protected or given preferential matchmaking, so you would often see fights where the more marketable fighter with the bigger fan base ended up losing, sometimes in brutal fashion, which the UFC used as a marketing gimmick, painting themselves as the company that made real fights happen, as opposed to boxing, which would cater to the casual masses. But as the sport grew and became more accepted, attracting a completely different audience that now outnumbered the original hardcore fan base, the company pivoted their strategy and began to prioritize marketability, and the arrival of a legitimate superstar that transcended the UFC and Conor McGregor brought in a new era where your ability to sell tickets was by far the most important quality you could possess as an up-and-coming fighter.
I say this to the fighters all the time. You know, if you're the type of fighter that comes in and the crowd goes crazy and goes nuts, awesome. If you're the type of fighter that walks in and everybody boos you, incredible.
That's great too.
Right, it's awesome. What you don't want to be is the person that nobody gives a one way or the other about. You know what I mean? You just walk in and there's nothing. Yeah. You don't want to be that guy.
As the established pay-per-view superstars of the 2010s retired, this attitude began to work against the UFC as they drove themselves into a perpetual state of trying to artificially recreate the hype of Conor McGregor and his biggest rival Khabib Nurmagomedov, sinking their promotional dollars into anybody that reminded them of either, while leaving some of the most talented fighters to fend for themselves because they didn't feel like they were pay-per-view material. And while previously this type of treatment was reserved for the up-and-comers, it eventually permeated the rankings, affecting the top 5 and even champions, who often found themselves as the promotional B-side, paid less and forced to work around the challenger schedule. And whenever one of these undesirables managed to capture a belt, the UFC's strategy was to match them up with an established name or an up-and-comer that they considered to be promising as quickly as humanly possible, hoping that the title would switch hands, or in the worst case scenario, that beating somebody with a large fan base would increase their profile as well. And that's precisely what they were hoping for when they tried everything in their power to make Jon Jones fight Tom Aspinall, because despite being immensely talented and holding a title, the interest for him is just not there. He's never main evented a pay-per-view, and if we're being honest, the bulk of his recent surge in popularity was due to how much people hated Jon Jones and wanted to see him lose than genuine interest in Tom Aspinall. And it's not really Tom's fault. The UFC heavyweight division is in complete disarray, with most of the big names retired and the up-and-comers being few, far between, and just not interesting. In fact, the only 2 heavyweight matchups to headline a pay-per-view in the past 2 years involved Jon Jones, and that fact is not exactly lost on Aspinall himself.
The heavyweight division is not exactly on fire at the moment.
From a name point of view.
From a name point of view. I think the talent's there, but if you look 5+ years ago, just the name value in the top 15 was incredible. We're talking guys like Fabricio Verdum, Cain Velasquez, JDS, Mark Hunt, Alistair Overeem, Brock Lesnar, etc., etc. Like the list of Stipe, the list goes on and on and on. Like you look through the top 15 and you're just like, wow, that is incredible. Whereas now you even me, who's a heavyweight, I look through the top 15 and I'm like, I'm not really seeing him fight before, do you know what I mean? So I think over the next few years that's going to change. There's going to be more big fights at heavyweight. People are going to become like more bigger names, which is great. Yeah, we just need more up-and-coming heavyweights doing a bit in the top 15.
And while Tom keeps a positive outlook on the future of the heavyweight division, the same can't exactly be said for the UFC, who view it as a straight-up money drain. And the fight with Jones was supposed to be a saving grace, turning Aspinall into a household name in his own right, just like the victory against Conor McGregor did for Nate Diaz. Outside of that, the division is a barren wasteland, with Tom already having finished 5 of the top 10 fighters in the first round, which is why the company was suddenly willing to shell out tens of millions of dollars to get Jon Jones back in the octagon, despite notoriously underpaying even their biggest stars, and why Dana began to praise Jones to the media any chance he got, often piggybacking off of questions about Tom Aspinall, because beating a fighter that the boss himself considered to be the GOAT would be that much more significant.
How good is he?
Very good. We're going to find out, though. We make this Jon Jones fight, and obviously a fight like that for a young, talented heavyweight, and if he can win, he could beat Jon Jones, it's life-changing.
There's no doubt about that the guy's got the talent. But when you start talking, he won this fight tonight, he could be the greatest of all time. Again, you know how I feel about Jon Jones. It's just, you got some big shoes to fill, and you got a lot of people to wreck, before you even start talking about even being within Jon Jones' universe, in my opinion.
Generally speaking, whenever Dana starts waxing poetic about a given fighter, it's always in the name of promotion and often doesn't reflect his actual feelings. Jon Jones himself has lashed out at Dana for being fake several times, and in private texts that were released during the antitrust lawsuit a couple of years back, Dana can be seen referring to Jones as a scumbag.
Dana, he's a business guy. I don't feel as if I'm not going to sit here and bash Dana. I think Dana's a business guy. Lorenzo's a business guy too, but he just comes across as more genuine to me. So I prefer talking to Lorenzo when I do business.
Perhaps the clearest example of this contrast between how Dana acts publicly and how he actually feels behind the scenes was his absolute adoration of Francis Ngannou when he was promoting him, compared to how he viewed their relationship after Francis left the UFC.
Francis Ngannou has the world record for the most powerful punch. His punch is the equivalent to 96 horsepower, which is equal to getting hit by a Ford Escort going as fast as it can. And it's more powerful than a 12-pound sledgehammer swung full force from overhead. Holy shit.
I didn't like Francis as a person. Wasn't a guy I wanted to do business with. My boys were telling me he's misunderstood. And I told them, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. Francis isn't a good guy. He plays the good guy. I don't understand the language, and so he seems like he's a nice guy. He's not, and he's just not a guy that I wanted to be in business with. Period. End of story.
And I assume you don't want to be in business with him ever again, but...
We won't be. We'll never be in business together. You can tell.
Yeah.
We don't like each other.
It's funny because outside of Jon Jones, getting Francis back into the UFC would be the only other logical way to bring back the heavyweight division and turn Aspinall into a household name. Just imagine the hype if he knocked out somebody that took Tyson Fury to a decision and beat the greatest heavyweight in UFC history while he was still close to his prime. But Dana's pettiness doesn't allow him to bend the knee to somebody that he feels has won over on him. And a secondary reason for pushing for the Jones fight as hard as he did was probably to take the moniker of being the best heavyweight on the planet away from Francis Ngannou. Even now that the fight has officially fallen through, the UFC is still trying to use the idea of it as a marketing strategy by matching Aspinall up with Cyril Gane, who Jones finished in round 1 with a front guillotine choke back in 2023, in order to keep the comparison between the two going. And I strongly suspect that behind closed doors, Aspinall is being urged to knock Cyril Gane out cold in order to paint the narrative that unlike Jones, he was able to beat him at his own game, getting whatever fans still care to pay attention to him in the future. But the thing is, I don't think it will work. Aspinall is outstanding in a division that nobody cares about, and beating the same 5 guys over and over again will never raise his profile. And being that he's already 32 and there is no promising heavyweight talent on the horizon, I simply can't picture him securing a significant matchup before he's in his mid to late 30s. And that's if we're discounting injuries where he has to sit out for a significant amount of time, or losses, which a heavyweight can happen within a matter of seconds. If something doesn't change quick, he's destined for a career where he receives constant praise from the hardcore fans while the general public doesn't know who he is. It's a situation that mirrors Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, who eventually chose to be traded out of his contract in order to try and make a career resurgence, except in Aspinall's case, the UFC still values the heavyweight division over the flyweight, so he won't even be able to do that.
It was frustrating. But then, you know, at the time I was like, I wonder if I can do something different. I wonder if I get out of my contract. I was like, you know, try to do something different. Because at the time, I looked at it this way. If I were to fight Henry Cejudo again for the third time, it could have gone either two ways. One, I beat Henry, then I'm still stuck in the same situation I am right now when at the time they're trying to get rid of, they were in talks about getting rid of the flyweight division, right? Or two, if I lose to Henry, then I'm still stuck in the same position. I just lost to him again. So why not see if I can go explore other options?
Ultimately, I feel bad for Tom Aspinall because it's a complete shame that somebody with his ability has to become a victim of circumstances that are outside of his control. And I genuinely hope that I'm wrong. I hope the heavyweight division spontaneously gains fresh talent that gets both the fans and the UFC excited for the future. I hope, but I just don't think that it will. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like the video if you liked it, and if you want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell next to it. And if you want to support this channel further, become a member by hitting join if you're on Android or desktop, or the link in the description if you're on iOS.